With all the talk about Generation 5 remakes, with all the rumors just spreading out in the internet, whether it's on Twitter, Facebook, Discord, I kind of wanted to take a step forward in time and talk about Generation 6 because I think Generation 6 has various circumstances in comparison to Generation 5. Generation 5 does have Black and White and Black 2 and White 2, so those games are more complete than the games that we're going to talk about, which are X and Y. I'm not really going to talk about ORAS because ORAS are technically remakes of Ruby and Sapphire, and remaking a remake in 2023 is kind of crazy, but hey, you never know. Before we get it right into it, please like and subscribe. It is the best way to support me for free, and I appreciate if all of you viewing this video go ahead and like and subscribe. All right, let's talk about Generation 6. Now, if you're wondering why I'm not talking about Generation 5, I already made videos of Generation 5 and my opinions and views on them. I will probably put them in the pinned comment section down below for you guys to just review, just to see what I said about Generation 5. But yeah, Generation 6. If you recall, Generation 6 essentially started the boom of PokeTubers and Wi Fi battles. I mean, if you thought Generation 5 was really good, Generation 6 was just the golden era of Pokemon, as many would like to call it. PokeTubers, Wi-Fi battling, playthroughs, walkthroughs, secrets. I mean, this was the generation that started everything. And of course, one particular detail was the transition between 2D to 3D. Pokemon was taking a gigantic leap into fading from the pixelated art now onto 3D with the Nintendo 2DS and the 3DS at the time. So, my biggest issue with Generation 6 in general is it cannot be a one-to-one faithful remake. The reason being is that X and Y to me, when I first played them, while the games were good and decent when I first played them, and a lot of you might have that same feeling too, over the years, X and Y have aged quite poorly. There isn't a lot of content when it comes to a Pokemon game like X and Y, and compared to its past and future generations, these games feel very lackluster in terms of locations, Pokemon being in random places, and of course, just the story and the overall essence of Generation 6, Kalos specifically. They just felt bare bones. And of course, there had to have been a sister game or a third game. I think Pokemon Z would have been perfect, as we saw Black 2 and White 2 kind of give Generation 5 more polish, more celebratory features in regards to that generation itself. Gen 6 did not have that luxury. Therefore, it was kind of left in bare bones. Now, of course, if you need a little bit of background story, Game Freak was kind of rushing to make ORAS. And of course, ORAS are the more celebrated games than X and Y, which is kind of crazy, considering X and Y are technically brand new games in the Pokemon mainline series. But there is a lot of missed opportunities, and that's why there can't be a one-to-one remake. And if you really want me to talk about that, let's talk about it. Because, for example, Zygarde, and I'm going to talk about Zygarde more in this video. Like, Zygarde was just there, even though it's the third legendary Pokemon. And you can argue, well, Kyurem was the third legendary Pokemon in Black and White, but at least Kyurem got its, revenge, its spotlight in Black 2 and White 2. And at least they made up for it. But for Zygarde, Zygarde didn't get actual stuff happening until Generation 7 in a completely different region. If you recall, Generation 7 had Zygarde 10% and Zygarde 100%, which is Zygarde Complete. So, again, stuff like that is something Generation 6 could not depend upon because they weren't there in the first place. And then we're going to talk about the potential of Kalos being open world. I think if you really want Generation 6 to be open world, Luminous City is basically your starting factor. Luminous City, it wasn't exactly open world, but it gave us the idea of how powerful the Nintendo 3DS is when a Pokemon game is used correctly. And of course, with the features of 3DS, you're able to travel through Luminous City and everything just looked fresh. Everything looked in 3D. That was basically the peak power of what Pokemon could be in 3D. And unfortunately, again, over time, this game didn't really withstand the test of time. And the biggest criticism of Pokemon, and if you wanted to point a gun at me and said what was the exact downfall of Pokemon, it was definitely the transition to 2D to 3DS. I'm sorry, to 2D to 3D, as well as having lackluster details and features not being present in these games. So if you want to make an open world Kalos region, I think developers should definitely take a look into Lumina City and just expand from there. Enough with that corridor stuff. I mean, at this point, that formula is not going to work considering we do have Scarlet and Violet, which are not corridor games. X and Y just cannot be a corridor game. Again, going back to that 1-to-1 Faithful remake, I think it just doesn't work in a game where there isn't enough to do and not enough to explore. You just cannot have a 1-to-1 remake. And again, I'm going to talk about the Zygarde stuff because there are specific places in the Kalos region where there's just there just seems like there needs to be more. For example, the story of Zygarde definitely should have been expanded in Generation 6 with a potential Pokemon Z, as I mentioned already. There's also another place that comes into mind, and that was the steam power plant. If you recall, while you're traveling through a desert like route in X and Y, I don't recall which it was. There's a place where it has like a random ass door in the middle of a desert, and it was supposed to be a doorway to a steam power plant, but it's locked, and you needed an actual item for it, and that item never existed. And a lot of people were speculating that it was supposed to be a placeholder for the Volcanion event, which of course never happened. And I feel like, again, just missed opportunities. A lot of missed opportunities. That's the focal theme of the original X and Y games. As good as the Pokemon may be, and as good as several places may look like, again, if there isn't much to do, these games are just going to age very, very poorly. And then I want to talk about potential DLC. I personally don't think Generation 6 will have DLC because, that's like 10 years too late. But if the opportunity arises and they wanted to make side story games, Pokemon Legends Kalos would be a pretty good one, specifically talking about the ultimate weapon. How did the Pokemon War started? So imagine like Pokemon Legends Arceus, but now you're in the Kalos region 3,000 years ago. You are, let's say, I'll make up a story right now. Let's say you are a cadet that just got into a military faction of the Kalos region and you're preparing for the ultimate weapon, or you're fighting in the Pokemon War that happened 3,000 years ago and you get to meet King AZ and his Floette. Actual story driven concepts that can be perfectly executed under the right circumstances. I think Pokemon Legends Kalos makes a lot more sense for a Generation 6 game. But of course, if they want to implement an actual Kalos remake, I think they need to dive into more of the storytelling. But unfortunately, as we've seen in the more recent Pokemon games, storytelling has just not been on the money. I would definitely love to see more storytelling in regards to, again, the ultimate weapon, the Pokemon War. How did Zygarde came to be? What about the origins of Xerneas and Yveltal? That's stuff that really needs to be, more polished, more detailed in potential remakes. And then last but not least, the biggest features. Mega Evolutions. One of the best gimmicks of all time. I think even after 10 years since their introduction, people are still in love with Mega Evolutions. And what is the better opportunity to bring them back in a potential Generation 6 remake? Or if you want to make a Legends Kalos game, what was the origin of Mega Evolutions? It was from a meteorite, correct? That contained Mega Energy. That'd be a pretty cool story to talk about as well. Using Mega Evolutions in a distant past. That'd be awesome. Damn, I should be a story writer for Game Freak. But we haven't had Mega Evolutions in a mainline Pokemon series since 2019 with the introduction of Sword and Shield. And based on Game Freak's and Pokemon Company's track record, they kind of want to keep Mega Evolutions within the confinements of Generation 6 and 7. I do believe Mega Evolutions are still beloved by everyone. Based on the polls that I've seen and just scouting the internet for popular opinion, like Mega Evolutions tend to be the best beloved, memorable gimmick in all the Pokemon mainline series, and that says a lot for something we haven't seen in quite a while. And it'd be awesome to see our beloved Mega Evolutions come back to life under different circumstances. Maybe again in Legends Kalos, or potentially in a remake where we can see upgraded um, texture models for Mega Evolutions. That'd be awesome. And there you have it. There goes my opinion of Generation 6. Again, I'm going to emphasize on saying that if they truly make remakes of Generation 6, that obviously has to depend on if there are Generation 5 remakes. And if they can build upon that, I will definitely say, I will stress this once again, Generation 6, X and Y in particular, they cannot be one-to-one remakes due to the lack of content and features that seem to be bare bones in comparison to other mainline series Pokemon games. But let me know what you guys think about Generation 6 remakes. It's your boy Franklin signing out. Don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button. Peace.